a jungle that lured them in, only to swallow them whole. Two young women vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of haunting clues and chilling silence. Was it the wrath of wild nature, or something far more sinister hiding in the shadows? A decade later, the truth remains buried in silence, unseen, unanswered, and unwilling to be found. April 1st started like any other sunlit morning in Boquete. Chris and Lisanne, both 20-something students with a love for exploration, laced up their hiking boots and set off toward El Pianista, a trail known for its breathtaking views and eerie silence. Some say they had brunch with two Dutch men before the hike. Others recall them bringing along a friendly dog from a local restaurant. Nothing about that morning seemed off, not in the photos Lisanne snapped on her Canon PowerShot camera. The images showed smiles, mountain peaks, and sunlight spilling through the clouds. They looked happy, at peace. Image number 508, the last normal photo, showed Chris carefully crossing a stream just after 1 p.m. And then, nothing. The plan was simple. Lisanne Froon and Chris Kremers, eager to explore the wild beauty of Panama, had arranged to hike the trail with a local guide. But on the eve of their adventure, something strange happened. They made an unexpected decision. A day earlier than planned, the two young women set off alone into the jungle, without the guide, without anyone to watch over them. Why did they do it? The answer remains a mystery. The next morning, their guide arrived at the trailhead, expecting to meet the two tourists. But there was no sign of them, no footprints, no trace that they had even started the trail. A sense of unease began to settle in. It wasn't until the following day that the search began, but the clues didn't match the story anyone had expected. Against all logic, two hikers were found on the trail. Lisanne and Chris were already deep in the wilderness. But how had they gotten there? The answer lay in an unlikely source, a local taxi driver who had dropped them off near the trailhead. And to complicate things further, there were two other men in the vehicle. Who were they? And what role did they play in the women's bizarre journey? As the details unraveled, the story grew stranger. The women, eager and excited to explore, had ventured into one of the most treacherous areas of the jungle, yet they had no map, no compass, no flashlight. They were walking blind into the heart of the unknown, with no tools to guide or protect them. And so, in the dense, untamed wilderness, they began their journey into the dark unknown, unprepared, unaware, and soon to vanish from the world as the jungle swallowed them whole. They didn't come back. No sign of the girls, no message, no movement. Concern spiraled into panic. Texts to Chris's father went unanswered. By April 6, their desperate families were on Panamanian soil, joined by Dutch detectives, trained dogs, and a hefty reward, $30,000 for any trace of Chris and Lisanne. The jungle was swept, rivers combed, air searched, but there was nothing, not yet. Somewhere past the last smiling photograph, their story took a turn, one that no one saw coming. So what really happened after image number 508? What began as a hike through paradise quickly unraveled into a desperate fight for survival. Unbeknownst to early searchers, Chris and Lisanne had started calling for help just hours after they were last seen. Chris's iPhone tried to reach emergency services, the first of what would become 77 failed attempts. Minutes later, Lisanne's Samsung followed. Both phones kept trying over the next several days, each call bouncing off the unforgiving silence of the jungle. There were no signals. Then came the photos, the strangest and most unsettling pieces of this tangled puzzle. From Lisanne's camera, investigators retrieved 133 images. Among them, 90 shots were taken in the dead of night on April 8th. Almost all were seemingly random. Pitch-black jungle, flashes against leaves, eerie close-ups of rocks, and inexplicable arrangements. A mirror, strips of plastic, white tissues. One photo stands out like a ghost in the dark. The back of Chris's head, slumped slightly forward, taken at 1:49 a.m. Some claimed to see blood near her temple. Others weren't so sure. But the most disturbing clue was what wasn't there. Photo number 509. Missing from the memory card. Were they deleted, corrupted, or something far worse happened that we can never imagine? Whatever happened in that jungle, it wasn't quick. And it wasn't simple. The question now wasn't just how they died, but what, or who, was with them in those final, harrowing days. It wasn't until June 14th, more than 10 weeks since Chris and Lisanne vanished into the rainforest, that the jungle finally gave something back. A local woman stumbled upon a blue backpack near the banks of the Culebra River, far off the main El Pianista trail. Oddly, the bag was dry and clean, untouched by the unforgiving Panamanian rain. Even stranger, locals swore it hadn't been there the day before. Inside, authorities found both women's phones, $88 in cash, sunglasses, 2 bras, and Lisanne's camera, almost as if someone had carefully packed it, then left it behind on purpose. Close by, Chris's denim shorts turned up, though whether they were folded neatly on a rock or tossed in disarray depends on who you ask. And then came the remains. A foot, still inside a boot, a piece of pelvis, bone fragments strewn along the river's edge. DNA confirmed the worst. It was them. But even in death, the mystery only deepened. Some of Lisanne's remains still had bits of skin. Chris's bones, however, looked almost artificial, bleached white, unusually clean, with phosphorus levels that didn't match the environment. No signs of trauma, no cuts, no answers. Just a heap of questions piling as the investigation moved further. The questions only had silence as a response, a silence that grows louder with every unsettling clue. Who placed the backpack so carefully? And why? Why were the bones so drastically different? And what really happened deep in the jungle that April afternoon when 2 bright lives vanished without a sound? The investigation into the disappearance of Chris Krimmers and Lisanne Froon was anything but straightforward. In the months following their vanishing, Panamanian authorities shifted their theories several times. At first, the case was classified as a possible homicide. Then, the focus turned toward abduction, with rumors swirling and pressure mounting from both the media and the Dutch government. But by March 2015, nearly a year after the girls vanished, the case was quietly closed. Officials concluded that Chris and Lisanne had died as a result of a tragic hiking accident. According to the final report, the treacherous terrain, steep 30 to 40 meter cliffs, and fast, unpredictable river currents were to blame. The ruggedness of the jungle, they said, could easily explain why only scattered remains were found, and why their discovery came weeks apart. Dutch forensic experts, who had worked alongside Panamanian teams, broadly agreed. They emphasized the dangerous conditions of the rainforest and the likelihood that the girls had gotten lost, injured, and ultimately succumbed to the elements. Their families, after months of agonizing uncertainty, accepted this explanation with heavy hearts. The bodies were flown home to the Netherlands, and Chris and Lisanne were finally laid to rest. In their memory, a small stone memorial was placed at the Mirador, the scenic viewpoint near the top of El Pianista, where their final smiling photos were taken. But even with the case closed, the public wasn't ready to move on. In fact, the official explanation only sparked more questions. Critics pointed out troubling inconsistencies, beginning with the mysterious appearance of the girl's backpack. Found along the Culebra River over 10 weeks later, it was strangely dry and clean, despite the heavy Panamanian rains. Locals swore it hadn't been there the day before. And of course, there was photo number 509, the missing image from the camera's sequence. It didn't appear in the memory card's structure, leading some to believe it had been deleted, possibly to hide something. Perhaps most haunting of all were the failed emergency calls made from the girls' phones, spanning days, even after one phone had died. The final attempts came after the correct PIN was no longer used, hinting that only one girl may have remained alive, or that a third party had gained access to the phone. We will dive deeper into the details of their phone's history next. Each detail chipped away at the idea of a simple accident, inviting speculation and sowing doubt. And as the years passed, new theories emerged, each more polarizing than the last. Because in this case, the facts are real, but the truth? That might be slightly evident upon the discovery of their phones. And let us tell you, it only gets more bizarre. In the days following Chris Kremer's and Lisanne Froon's disappearance, investigators clung to every fragment of information they could recover, and what they found inside two phones, a white iPhone 4 and a black Samsung Galaxy S3, would become one of the most haunting aspects of the case. Both devices, retrieved from a backpack discovered over a week after the girls vanished, painted a picture of desperation, fear, and a chilling silence that slowly consumed them. The phone activity began on April 1st, the very day the girls were last seen. Lisanne's Samsung made the first emergency call to 112, the international emergency number. It lasted for just a second due to no signal. A second attempt followed a minute later, again, failed. Just moments after, at 4:51 p.m., Chris's iPhone also tried dialing 112. That call, too, failed. These frantic attempts to reach help suggested that something had gone terribly wrong just hours into what was supposed to be a casual hike on the El Pianista Trail. On April 2nd, Lisanne's phone tried again, first at 6:58 a.m. and again at 10:53 a.m., both to 112. Still, no success. The calls didn't connect, but the effort alone told a grim story. The girls were alive, stranded, and desperately trying to call out for help. Then, that same morning, Chris's iPhone tried to call 911, Panama's emergency number, at 11:56 a.m., followed by more failed attempts throughout the day. On April 3rd, the calls continued in the morning, another to 911, then to 112, using both phones. But with each failed attempt, hope dwindled. What followed next was even more unsettling. After April 5th, the Samsung showed no further activity. Its battery had likely died. The iPhone, however, told a more cryptic story. On April 6th, it was powered on again, but this time, the correct PIN wasn't entered. From that day onward, someone repeatedly attempted to unlock the phone, never successfully. The calls had stopped. Now, all that remained were silent, failed attempts to access the device, as if Chris herself had been separated from her phone. Or worse, someone else was trying to use it. Between April 7th and 11th, the iPhone was switched on multiple times. Brief flickers of activity in the dark, but with no further calls, no photos, no messages. Just a cold, lifeless glow each time the screen was lit. The final activity came on April 11th at 10:51 a.m., when the phone was turned on for the last time. After that, nothing. The timeline left behind by the phones is one of the most disturbing elements in the mystery. It's as if the devices were their last lifeline, slowly dimming along with their chances of survival. And while no call ever connected, the signal they left behind, a trail of unanswered cries, still echoes through the jungle and through every unanswered question in this haunting case. But the story the phones told wasn't just about failed calls. It was about what didn't happen, about the silence that followed, and the disturbing gaps that raise far more questions than answers. Why, for instance, on April 11th, Chris's iPhone was turned on for exactly 64 minutes, a full hour. No call was placed, no message typed, no photo taken, just an hour of eerie silence with the screen on. Was someone scrolling through it, trying to figure out how to use it? Or did that glowing screen shine in the middle of the jungle, lighting up a final moment of helplessness? And after that, nothing. The phone was never used again. No further attempts to power it on. No final messages. No last goodbye. In a case that left behind hundreds of photos, attempted emergency calls, and desperate signals, the most baffling part might just be this. Why didn't they leave a message? No farewell, No explanation, no note typed into the phone's memo, just silence. These unanswered questions continue to haunt everyone who's followed the case. Because in the end, the phones didn't just tell a story of what happened, they left behind the most bizarre and disturbing turn of events that is enough to keep one up all night. In the years since Chris and Lisanne's disappearance, the case has sparked a wave of intense, often polarizing theories, each one attempting to shed light on the tragic mystery. With each new angle, a deeper layer of intrigue and tension unfolds, as the truth remains locked somewhere in the shadows of the jungle. One of the most chilling theories to emerge is the foul play theory, which suggests that the two women were not just lost, but were victims of something far darker, perhaps a kidnapping or even murder. The case is filled with suspicious details that seem to point to foul play, the bizarre images on their camera, some of which show unsettling, unexplainable scenes, and the fact that their remains were only found months after large-scale search efforts had turned up nothing. The timing of their deaths, so far removed from the last known search, raises the uncomfortable possibility that someone, a third party, may have been involved. And then there's the possibility of tampering. Could their belongings have been staged, the camera manipulated to create a false narrative? The theory lingers in the back of people's minds, unshakable and haunting. But as theories swirl, one stands out for its bizarre and controversial nature, the unrequited love theory. This one is fueled by rumors circulating in dark corners of the internet, suggesting a deep, hidden tension between the two women. According to this theory, Chris harbored unspoken love for Lisanne, a love that was never reciprocated. The story goes that a tense argument between the two led Chris to a moment of explosive anger, pushing Lisanne off a cliff in a fit of unrestrained emotion. Racked with guilt, the theory claims, Chris wandered aimlessly through the jungle until her own death. This theory, however, is riddled with holes. There's no concrete evidence to back up these claims, no signs of a violent confrontation or a hidden romantic relationship. Most dismiss it as a sensational rumor, but it still lingers, unsettling in its intensity. Then there's the organ trafficking theory, a more sinister and outlandish claim. According to this theory, the host family in Bouquet somehow got involved with organ traffickers, leading to the two women being abducted on the trail. The idea is that they were held captive for days, maybe even subjected to a horrific fate before being killed. While the suggestion of organ trafficking stirs unease, the lack of any credible evidence to support this theory makes it seem highly unlikely. Investigators have pointed out the absence of proof, leaving the theory to fizzle in the background, a haunting whisper rather than a legitimate possibility. Despite these wild and chilling theories, there's still a sizable group of experts who hold fast to the accident theory, a much simpler but no less tragic explanation. According to this perspective, Chris and Lisanne simply went off the beaten path, becoming disoriented in the dense, unforgiving jungle. It's easy to imagine how quickly the environment could have turned against them. Rugged terrain, sudden injuries, the crushing isolation of the jungle. One of them could have been hurt, forcing the other to venture out for help. The theory suggests that they eventually succumbed to the dangers of exposure, starvation, and the unforgiving landscape, with no way to escape. While it's a hard theory to accept, it's one that, for many, fits the known facts best. An accident, tragic and unavoidable, in a place where survival is a constant battle against nature. Each theory has its own unique set of supporters, and with every new piece of evidence, the questions grow. But the one thing that remains clear in this case is that Chris and Lisanne's final hours are shrouded in mystery, leaving behind only fragments of truth and endless speculation. The mysterious case of Chris and Lisanne has refused to fade into the past. Over the last 5 years, the story has continued to captivate the public's imagination, drawing attention, theories, and intense scrutiny. In 2021, Dutch authors Marja West and Jurgen Snuren stirred the pot once again with the release of their book. The authors, having spent countless hours combing through police files and records, uncovered new perspectives and inconsistencies that had previously gone unnoticed. Their work seemed to breathe new life into the case, offering alternative theories that reignited public fascination. The unresolved questions they uncovered left many wondering, had the official narrative been wrong all along? As the years rolled on, the 10th anniversary of the women's disappearance in April 2024 marked a significant milestone. Despite the passage of time, the case had not faded from memory. Instead, advances in forensic technology and the relentless curiosity of online sleuths led to renewed calls for the reevaluation of evidence, specifically the bones that had been found and the digital data from the women's phones. With the sharp precision of modern forensic methods, some wondered if hidden clues might finally come to light, possibly shedding new insights into what really happened to Chris and Lisanne. In September 2023, the release of a film took the global spotlight back to the case, once again reigniting curiosity about the two girls' final days. The film's re-examination of the case, highlighting alleged investigative oversights, gave a different perspective to how evidence had been handled. People began questioning, were critical pieces of information overlooked? Were the investigations flawed from the start? As the media spotlight once more focused on the tragic story, it stirred a new array of debate and speculation, causing so many people to wonder if there was more to this haunting mystery than anyone had realized. With each passing year, the case only grows more enigmatic, its disturbing questions continuing to haunt those who dare to dig deeper. New angles, fresh evidence, and renewed curiosity make it clear this is a story that refuses to be forgotten. As the years have gone by, the families of Lisanne Froon and Chris Kremers have steadfastly stood by the official conclusion of their loved one's tragic accident. Their belief in this explanation has offered them a measure of closure, even as the rest of the world remains captivated by the mystery. For them, the story may have come to an end, but for everyone else, the puzzle lingers. The phone records, camera images, scattered remains, and lingering forensic uncertainties provide enough material to fuel a host of competing theories. While the families try to heal, investigators, journalists, podcast hosts, and online communities are still debating. Some see a tragic, albeit straightforward misadventure in the treacherous landscape of El Pianista's rugged terrain. Others, however, sense the shadow of something far darker, a hidden truth that has yet to be uncovered. Lisanne and Chris's case has evolved into one of Panama's most confusing and talked about modern mysteries. Over the decades since their horrific hike, countless theories have surfaced, each more chilling than the last. Yet despite all the speculation, no definitive answer has emerged. As technology advances and new discoveries surface, there is always the possibility that one breakthrough, whether it's a fresh forensic analysis or a crucial new witness, could shed light on what truly happened during those final days. But until then, the questions remain unanswered, adding to the ever-growing sense of mystery that continues to surround the tragic deaths of Lisanne Froon and Chris Kremers. Was it simply an horrible accident, or was there more lurking in the shadows? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.